Sillsy, buddy, how's it going, man? It's good to see you.
Yeah, Greels, what's up, buddy? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you. It's been a minute. You know what? I've been enjoying this new Connor vibes where you're uploading to social media more and more often. This was something that, I think in all the seasons that I knew you, you probably posted maybe like 4 Insta stories, but now I'm seeing them pop up more and more. What's up with that?
I don't know, man. Just I don't know. Kids these days just put like social media is more and more popping off, I guess you could say, and just like in lockdown, especially, dude. Like the social interaction, like I need to get it, and like people in general just need to get it somehow. So I mean, like whatever I can post, I don't know, just like little interactions here and there, just on my stories is has been good, man.
Yeah, so I guess a way for you to stay reconnected, especially with all the guys being all spread out now.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like I think the last time I been was in Ottawa, especially it was in September. So it's been a minute since I've seen most of the boys, and the last month and a half, I was actually down in my girlfriend's house in Burlington, which is like Toronto area. So like just it was nice to be there and be with her, but like man, I've missed the interaction with the boys, especially. So just the interaction on social media is good.
So now, did I see correctly? You're doing firefighting school, like you're going to be a firefighter, or did I just completely read that wrong?
No, yeah, man. So when essentially when Dundee didn't work out, their season in England kind of got canceled. I was kind of in the back of my head like, all right, like is hockey going to be a possibility, or like maybe I should make a backup plan. So I looked into fire school because I mean it's always something that I've wanted to do as a career, kind of post hockey. So I looked into it, and then just I'm doing fire school 3 months online and then 1 month down in Texas for for like a boot camp style. And then once I'm done that, I graduate with my firefighter one, firefighter two, and that's just kind of something to help you out with the hiring process.
So tell me about that process because, I grew up in Newfoundland, so a lot of our fire departments are typically volunteer and stuff like that. Like, I think there's normally like one paid guy, but then the rest of it is from like community involvement and engagement almost. So there's actually, I guess, job postings in other, I guess, more populated cities.
Yeah, man. So in like especially or well, where I'm trying to get on, which is in Ontario basically, but I mean I wouldn't be opposed to getting on like out east, out west, like wherever. But yeah, there's volunteer departments, there's career departments, and what I want to do is a career firefighter. So they're kind of like a all resource department where they like go to fires, go to rescue calls. They're first responders, so they do like anything from like swift water rescues to burning buildings type deal. So it's I don't know, it's just something that I actually did wildland firefighting the last, so like forest firefighting the last 3 years, and I love that. So um I don't know, a lot probably I'd say probably 4, 5, 6 years ago I kind of knew like firefighting would be like my kind of like what I want to do post hockey career. So that's what I'm doing right now. I figured COVID kind of ruined the hockey season, so what better time to get started on that?
No, for sure. So what were you studying at U Ottawa again? Remind me.
So I got a major in criminology with a minor in psychology.
Okay. Do you find any of that is applying to the firefighting or not at all? They're polar opposites.
No, man, there's like for the criminology, especially like there's a big part of fire that or for fire with like fire investigations and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's pretty cool. And then the psychology stuff, just like managing stress, man. Like getting like you go to some calls that are pretty fucked up. Like you see some shit. So um like the psychology part, just knowing how to like what goes on in your head and managing stress and stuff is pretty applicable there. So I think it's good.
Yeah, because I guess firefighters aren't just responding to fires, like you're first responders, so you're going to be going to car accidents, like incidents where you need, I guess, first aid.
Yeah. So that's probably majority of the calls I'd say is first responders and vehicle accidents and stuff like that. So
Okay, and I know you're going through like the learning process right now, but I'm curious in terms of the mental aspect of, being a first responder, Like, what essentially is your mindset where you're like, yeah, I can mentally prepare for that? Because when I think of that myself, it's just like, man, like I don't know if I could put myself in that situation.
Yeah, I don't know. I think some people are just better suited for that. Like some people can handle the stress, or like can see blood and like other body parts, or I can just be able to handle that and look at it in like not a negative way where you're like, oh my god, this person's like dead or might lose their life. It's more like, well, like I'm helping this person out kind of deal. So I think that's kind of a mindset that you have to have, and then just like essentially like I don't know, controlling your breathing, controlling everything, just little things to not freak out during in a time of in a time like that, like an emergency.
Just with a little study session here.
Dude, I actually had an exam last night, so it's the midterm exam, so and it went well, so
It went well. Oh, okay. I was gonna
yeah.
say we should have done this 2 days ago. Get you prepared even more.
Yeah, I have a little study date. Why not?
I'm curious now. Are your parents first responders? Was that kind of an introduction to the field, or was it just an excluded passion of yours?
No, man. So that my parents both worked for the Ministry of Natural Resources, so they're
Okay.
both in forestry. So that's essentially what got me into forest firefighting. Like I just loved being outdoors and exploring and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of what got me involved in the forest fire stuff. The like the structural firefighting and the more career is just it kind of all the similarities that you see in hockey, right? Like firefighting super team oriented. It's very like buy in as a team to have a winning culture in the sense of you can't there's no room for error, like you're saving someone's life or you're like saving someone's property, and you need to work together and work towards that goal. So and firefighting also is just like super rewarding. Like you're helping someone who kind of can't help themselves at that time, and I don't know, I just think it's a pretty honorable job, and the similarities with hockey just in everything, leadership, teamwork's like that's kind of why I chose to do that.
Now, with your parents, what aspects of their job were you kind of seeing? Did you just was there a lot of like take your kid to work day kind of thing, or
uh Honestly, I can't really remember. I think I've gone like went to, my parents actually both live or worked in the same building. So when I did go to work, whether it was like after school or something, like I'd get to kind of see both of them. So I went there. But later on in their careers, they mostly worked in a like an office building. They weren't so much in the outdoors. But I don't know, just kind of yeah, it's not very similar at all. Just the outdoor aspect kind of got me into it.
fair enough? Because I guess this is all happening in Thunder Bay.
So the online portion right now, I'm in Thunder Bay. Yeah, I can do it from anywhere, but then in the month of May, I have to go down to Austin, Texas, and do the boot camp where it's kind of just like it's like a military style, hands-on camp that we get to do to
Mhm.
practice all the practical skills.
Yeah, sorry, I'm talking about like when you were growing up and getting outdoors. Like that was all Thunder Bay because you're Thunder
Oh
Bay
yeah,
born
dude.
and raised, right?
Oh yeah, man. I was born and raised Thunder Bay, so all
Okay.
that was all that outdoor.
Because yeah, I've never been, but it is probably one of the more like forestry towns, like better landscapes than probably the rest of Ontario. Like you're kind of up there by yourself, more or less.
Yeah, man. Like we're pretty well the only big-ish town, and um, what else? Sault Ste. Marie, which is 8 hours east, and then there's just little towns in between, and then we're also like half hour from the Minnesota border. But so like I used to go to hockey tournaments there, but the landscape is pretty incredible. There's some pretty sweet spots, man. Like fishing, hunting is huge out here, and just like I don't know, I kind of love just being outdoors and doing all that type of stuff.
So when you're growing up in that landscape, what was the hockey scene like? Especially, I know you just mentioned you did some tournaments down in Minnesota and whatnot, but I know the community of athletes in Thunder Bay are all pretty proud and are kind of well aware of each other.
Yeah, man. So we're actually have the most NHL players per capita. So man, there's like a crazy amount of NHL players that are from here. There's actually right now, I think there's probably like all the Stahl brothers, Robert Bertuzzo, Mackenzie Blackwood, Matt Murray, Carter Hutton are all active players, and then the list goes on for for all the other players that came from that. But there's a pretty good minor hockey in Thunder Bay. I played with the Thunder Bay Kings AAA organization, so I essentially grew up with all my best buddies, went to school with them, and kind of grew up playing all together and just hanging out on weekends and stuff like that together. And we're like, which is awesome. And some players in Southern Ontario and those other big cities, like they have to make the hour drive. They don't get to hang out with their friends. Like they're kind of just on the team to stay competitive with hockey. So it was pretty cool.
Now, were the Stahl brothers like role models for you growing up? Like, was that who you inspired to be in terms of the hockey scene, or was it any of the other people that you listed, or maybe even some like local legends that nobody knows?
Oh yeah, man, it was the Stalls 100%. Like I was growing up, my dad's a diehard Leafs fan, so I kind of followed suit in that regard. But I like my second team growing up was always Carolina, and I remember like going to the parade when he won in 2006, and like always being at the rink, like watching their practices. The younger brother actually, the youngest brother he would play on the Thunder Bay Kings when I was on when I was playing in Pee Wee. So I remember I'd be watching him and see them around the rink often, and then kind of once I started playing in the OHL, I got to be skating with those guys. So like there's pretty good skates here in Thunder Bay with all the pro guys that are around. So once I kind of got to that level and established myself as one of the guys that could like hang, I started like skating with them, just seeing them in the locker room, seeing them on the ice. So they were huge role models growing up, and I was pretty fortunate.
What was that transition like, going from essentially a fan to almost like a colleague?
I don't know, man. It's pretty cool. Like, like just going through the OHL and being around all like some great players and having teammates that are great players. By the time I actually got to meet them and skate with them, I was pretty chill and like nonchalant in a sense that you don't want to go up and be, oh my god, like Jesus Christ, it's Eric Stahl, like give me an hug. Like I was pretty cool with them, and just seeing them in the locker room, like they're pretty humble guys. So it's been fun, man.
For sure. So the Thunder Bay Kings, that AAA organization, you mentioned the youngest Stahl brother was a part of there. And, with Thunder Bay having the most like NHL players per capita, like what do you think makes your program so special where you excel and probably exceed a lot of expectations for the rest of Canada?
I don't know, man. It's just we're such a like hockey town. I mean, I think like, dude, I don't know. We're just such a hockey town. We have such a history. Just a northern community that's pretty big. That's kind of just come together. There's Lakehead University that plays in youth sports that was kind of big growing up, and there's been through the years junior USIHL teams, like senior hockey. Um, I don't know. It's a pretty special town, and like just an awesome alumni, to be honest. Like some of the rooms that I was dressing in when I was on the Pee Wee Kings or when I was on the minor midget Kings are better than some of the like junior A rinks and dressing rooms that I've seen. So like just an awesome program and like some amazing alumni.
I'm curious, do you know Todd Skirving by chance?
Yeah, man, I know him. I've skated with him from time to time. He's on the Growlers. You know him?
Yeah, well, I know him kind of like virtually. I shot one game when I was home for like Christmas break of the Growlers, and we just kind of been chatting since. But he's been on the show, probably. Man, I'm gonna butcher the episode, but I want to say around like the 20 range, something like that.
Okay, right on. Yeah,
Yeah,
Squeaks. Yeah,
he
he loves hockey, man.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a big hockey guy. He also, was a part of bringing Newfoundland our first pro championship, so that was always exciting.
Yeah, I remember seeing pics of that. That was unbelievable.
It was insane, honestly. Like that was such a cool time. I mean, I kind of had like a little bit of FOMO just like watching it from away, but still a special moment. It was cool because they had a mix of guys like well, for one, what I loved about like guys like Skirving were that they really embraced like the island. Like they were like so much in terms of fans of like the actual people here and like the landscapes. And he's always hyping up Newfoundland, which is great to see. But then we also had a great local showing on that team as well too, right? With guys who were just some of the best Newfoundlanders, but then also kind of established themselves as being stars in the coast as well.
Yeah, man, that's pretty special what happened there, and just yeah, Squeaks is a great guy, and like I could see him fitting right in with all the Newfoundlanders and stuff, and then just even on that team having all those Newfoundlanders kind of just brought everything full circle and together. I remember you and Droves watching those games. Like Droves was more hyped up about those games than he was about our own games. He's like, "Holy fuck, boys! Like the Growlers are gonna do it," and we're just like, "Jesus, Droves, like calm down, buddy."
There's a lot of pride in there for sure. When you're playing minor hockey, when does it kind of clue in that you're pretty good and you've got a shot at a junior career?
Man, honestly, I I don't know. I was never ever the best player on the team. I played house league from the age of 4 to the age of 10, and then after that, I kind of I begged my dad. I was like, "Can I play double A?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure. Like, we'll get you in there, whatever." And then I played 2 years double A. Then I went on to play Pee Wee triple A, and then I actually went back to double A for both years of bantam, and then minor midget, I went back to triple A, which was my draft year, and that was kind of my coming out party, where I had a pretty good coach and a pretty good year, got some good opportunity, and then that's kind of when then I got drafted. Before that year, I honestly had no expectation. I don't think anyone had any expectation for me to get even drafted. So I was never the most skilled player, but I definitely worked pretty hard.
For sure. Now I'm curious too because like you're 6'4", right? Like I guess 6'6" on skates, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So what at what age did like was that your height like when you came into that?
uh it wasn't early, man. It was probably around minor midget. Like I was always
Okay.
big, but I was never the biggest guy on the team. And then minor midget, I kind of had a little growth spurt there and was probably around 6'2", 6'3", and then over by the time I turned 17, 18, I only grew about an inch.
Okay, fair enough. So I guess how are you like coming into frame with like that size on skates? Because I've chatted with some basketball players, and for the most part, in terms of them talking about their coordination, because those guys hit like 6'5" at like 15. I think one of them did. Like, what are you doing to really adapt that coordination at that point, especially on skates?
I mean, I think it's just in the gym, like doing a lot of core stuff, a lot of stability, a lot of like agility, and like work on areas that like ankle mobility and just like little things like that, hip mobility, stuff like that to kind of like get your body prepared. But I think the biggest thing, man, was just like, man, my skates. I would go through different like pair of skates every year, sometimes twice a year. My feet were growing so much, and then essentially my dad is just like, "Fuck this, we're buying the biggest size skates. You're kind of growing into these." So that was pretty funny, but yeah, man, just working hard in the gym and a lot of core and a lot of stuff to um, keep grounded.
Now, with all that hard work, what was it like when you finally heard your name called by the Whalers?
Man, I was pretty fired up. Like I was absolutely pumped. Yeah, because I had no expectation going into that year. So that year, I uh, I had a good year. and then we played in a Winnipeg league actually. So our only time that we would really get exposure to those OHL scouts was we had 3 or 4 tournaments in Southern Ontario, and the one which was the biggest one was the OHL Cup. And so the OHL Cup, I actually had a really good tournament. I remember I talked to like a handful of teams, and Plymouth wasn't even one of them. And then, like, just I was actually at a U16 like Team Ontario camp when I found out. I was on the ice practicing, and one of my buddies came up to me and he's like, "Dude, you just got drafted to Plymouth." My dad just told me, and I was like, "No way!" Like, unreal. But at the same time, I was at a hockey camp with a bunch of my best buddies that like were in the same position and hadn't been drafted. So I was kind of like holding it together. Like, I didn't want to be celebrating too hard and like be rubbing it in anyone's face. But at the same time, I was super excited, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a cool moment. That's kind of ironic. A lot of those, sometimes late round draft picks, they always have the best draft stories because some guys are just kind of chilling, not really thinking anything's going to happen, and then it's a big surprise. One of my favorites was Ty Cran, who is now playing with Montreal in the CFL. This is a football story as opposed to hockey, but he was telling me more or less that like he was just kind of chilling out at home. They were all having like a little family barbecue. He didn't even think he was going to get anywhere near to being called. And then sure enough, he just like gets a random phone call and it's like, "Hey, yeah, like you're drafted into the CFL now." And it's like, whoa, wow.
Yeah, when it catches you off guard, it's kind of nice. I wasn't expecting much, to be honest, but like just hearing that, I was super fired up. So that's funny.
Now, what's interesting about the destination in Plymouth, like where is that again? Because I have a couple things I want to ask you about the city in general, but that's what I want to start with is establishing exactly where it's to again.
So it's in Michigan, which is
Okay.
funny enough because it's the OHL and it's a
Yeah.
team in the States. And so it's about half hour from Detroit, half hour west from Detroit.
Okay. Yeah, I knew it was in the States and obviously, it's now Flint, which, we'll get into too, because you went through that transition. But for me, I guess too, at the same time, now correct me on the timelines of any of this, but I knew about Plymouth mainly because of the whole Tyler Seguin, Taylor Hall NHL draft year. I think that realistically is probably the last big time debate we've had in terms of like an NHL draft where it's like there really is a toss up between 1 and 2. It kind of seemed like, of drafts lately, it's always just kind of been like, yeah, Alexei Lafreniere is going 1 and, 2 and 3 are in debate kind of thing. But that was almost the last entry draft in my mind where 1 and 2 were such a toss up and you didn't really know. So I was very aware of the Whalers because of like Tyler Seguin, and I feel like he brought their like popularity up exceptionally. Was that like a thought when you got drafted? Was like, hey, I'm going to like Sagan's alumni?
Yeah, I knew like same thing. I knew the hype between Hall and Sagan. So that was definitely on my mind. I was kind of honestly, I had no idea where Plymouth was. I was in the same boat. I was like, where the fuck is this place? But actually a guy from Thunder Bay who's about 2 years older than me, he played on the team. So I also knew that. But yeah, like Sagan, even when we got there, he was there. What was there? A year before I was there? 2 years? I think he was 2 years before I was there. But even just the buzz, even when we were there, like it was like, man, this kid was something special. Like the whole, like he had definitely rose the stock of that team and like put them on the map essentially more than they already were, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because funny enough, me being from all the way to Newfoundland, the only junior teams I really can recollect from like my teenage years were Windsor and Plymouth. Mainly Windsor because they were so good throughout that decade. I'd say, I think what like 2 Mem Cups in that span or something like that, and then like obviously Plymouth just having Tyler Seguin and whatnot.
Yeah, man. Same year. Like I didn't know all the OHL teams at all. Like before that minor midget year, the draft and OHL wasn't even really on my radar. So I definitely knew about Windsor, the Londons, and just some of the big names that were coming out of the teams like that.
Now, your OHL draft year, 2011, obviously, you know, with any draft class, it's a special group. Like there's always going to be talent coming out of it, right? And as the years go by, we're going to see more and more NHL stars. And, you know, it's pretty apparent that there was lots in this draft. You know, Bo Horvat, Max Domi, Nick Ritchie, Darnell Nurse. You know, you mentioned even Tyler Bertuzzi later down in some of the rounds. I think he went to Guelph. But you know, one big thing of that OHL priority draft, and it doesn't happen very often, but a guy gets exceptional status, Aaron Ekblad. He goes, you know, first overall. What's it like in that class, knowing that once you kind of get in and start getting like OHL action, that you have somebody who is in that class amongst you that has been granted like exceptional status? Because we haven't seen it very often, right? Obviously, you know, it's Aaron, Connor McDavid, Shane Wright. I believe I'm forgetting like two more, maybe, or one more.
Yeah, so I mean, going in, I didn't play against them in any tournaments or anything like that, so I didn't really know who it was. And then, like going in, he was a defenseman, right? So he wasn't super flashy, standout, highlight reel goal every night, but he was just like a man child that essentially played the right way and established his presence early on. So I mean, that was pretty cool. And then even the next, what was it, a year after, 2 years after, when McDavid came in, that was something that's like, all right, this kid's like good.
Yeah, so I guess you played in an era in the OHL where there was, I guess, what X-Bike was there when you were a rookie because obviously you were same class, and then McDavid kind of when you were uh your second last season.
McDavid was there for my full like first 3 years he was there.
Yeah, true. I'm forget. I was like, yeah, McDavid is a 97, so there's two. Yeah, okay, that's just bad math on my part.
But yeah, he was pretty special, man. Like I remember some games. So like my second, third, fourth year, I was essentially on the third line, like shutdown line. Like I'd be matched up against their top line, trying to shut them down. So if you can manage to stay even or like -1, like you did your job. And I remember going up nights against McDavid and just being like -3 or -4 and being like, this is a joke. And then he put on like one game, I think he put up like 5 points against us and just put like our D in a blender, put him on Sportsnet. And I remember I was on the bench for that one, luckily. And I remember just sitting on the bench and I was just like, look to the guy to my right. I was just like, honestly, like, good for him. And like just started tapping my stick. I was like, good for this guy. Like, that's sick.
You almost just can't believe it. I guess
Yeah, I was in awe, dude.
is that somebody who you accredit as being the top player that you played against during your time in the OHL? Like I'm curious if you could put together, I guess, you know, because McDavid and Ekblad are probably obvious picks, but let's fill out a roster. Who would you credit to being kind of like the top three forwards, top two defensemen, and goalie that you went up against in your time in the O?
I mean, yeah, McDavid's up there for sure. Um, Ekblad, same thing. And Max Domi was so good in the OHL. Like he was pretty nasty. Same with who was there my first year? Like even Galchenyuk was pretty gross my first year. I was lucky enough to play with Vincent Trocheck, who was the OHL leader in points my first year, and then I'd say I'd probably throw in like Tom Wilson on that list too. Like I thought he was such a good player.
Hey, you just got a big suspension, eh? 7
Yeah,
games.
yeah, I saw that 7 games. Got in 2 fights after that too.
Yeah, I personally haven't watched like any of the clips. I've just seen that he got 7 games. I remember I kind of had that game on in the background. I was just kind of like casually paying attention to it, so I'm not really sure what happened. But now, in terms of mental preparation, like you said, you were that third shutdown line. When you're tasked to shutting a guy down like McDavid, who, like you said, is putting people on Sportsnet like every night for making them look ridiculous. Like, what's the thought process where you're there? Like, because I know you just touched on it. Like, you're hoping to go like 0 or at least like -1, and that's almost like a good night.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know how well I did against shutting down McDavid, but like against other guys, you just kind of play the right way, play on the defensive side of the puck, like don't get caught like cheating for offense, finish all your checks, just little things like that that go a long way for team success is kind of how you got to look at it. Just wear them down and hope that you keep them off the score sheet. And then if your line's able to pop one, then that's just a bonus.
For sure. Now, take me through the transition of being a rookie in the OHL and integrating yourself into that Whalers locker room and lineup.
Yeah, so man, I was pretty like I had no expectations going in to actually make the team. Like they were such a stacked team. Like I think that year we had 13 NHL draft picks, um, like 5 or 6 first rounders, and then just a bunch of guys, bunch of good, awesome players. So I had no expectations. I remember going into rookie camp that year, and I fought the heavyweight on the team at that time, which is kind of what like I think got me there. And then I remember in preseason that year, I think I got in 2 more fights, and my coach is like, yeah, like we're keeping this guy for sure. Like let's go. And then kind of just stepping in to that locker room, like you're kind of in awe, and you don't want to step on any toes and come off too strong. So you just kind of ease in, get to know the guys, and then let your personality come out from there. But we had an awesome team and a bunch of unbelievable players and leaders on that team that kind of took me under their wing and showed me the ropes.
It's kind of interesting because I guess how much hockey's evolved and, fighting has been on a decline year after year. Do you think almost like if you say you were starting your junior career to this day, you maybe might not make that roster anymore?
Yeah, man, like the game has changed so much. I mean, I still think there's like you need fighting in the game. Like it's a huge part of the game. Like it's definitely in decline, but you see the guys on like the NHL Stanley Cup winning teams with the Wilsons and the Pat Maroons and the list goes on right now the last 2 years. But I mean, I definitely think fighting is kind of what helped me out getting there. Like my skill was never up there, but that's something I worked on after the fact. Once I got there, and I was like, okay, I had never fought before, so I kind of knew going in. I kind of got a tip from one of the scouts saying like, hey, like if you want to kind of like make yourself known, like you should go out and like get in a fight. And then I remember the heavyweight came up to me because I think the scout told him the same thing, like, hey, go see what this guy's made of. And he came up to me and he's like, hey, you want to go? I was like, yeah, like sure, let's go. And I just kind of buried my head and started throwing fists. I was like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. Like, let's keep going. But yeah, it's definitely making its way out of the game. But I think now, and with that mindset, I definitely would have been working on other things to establish myself in the league, working on my skill. That's kind of what I've done up until this point. Like I established myself as a fighter early and like a hard hitting, hard nosed player. And then as I kind of made my way there and stuck, then I worked on those other skills.
Hmm. For sure. So essentially for you, when you kind of took shape as a fighter slash like enforcer, that was when you got drafted to the OHL?
Yeah, so that's when I got drafted. Plymouth was always known as like a hard team and like hard team to play against. Like I remember after I got drafted, um, going there and just seeing like some of the guys that they had in previous years that were like absolute nail guns. And I remember their scout, actually, one of the scouts sent me a clip. He's like, here's some highlight tape, like, of just like the team, like, give this a watch. Like, this is kind of like how we play, like, whatever. And I remember there was like half of it was skills and the other half was just straight fights and like line brawls. And I was like, okay, is this guy like sending me a message, or like, is this what's going on? So I remember I kind of prepared myself for that style of play, and then kind of just went with it, man. We actually, even in Plymouth, when I got there, we had this guy who was an absolute legend. He was probably 70 years old, this short African American guy, and he was from Detroit, and he was our boxing coach. So we, after practice, after like twice a week, 3 times a week, he'd pull guys aside, and we'd have a boxing coach. So back then, that's what, 8-9 years ago. Now it was still like very relevant, as opposed to today, where you might not see that as much.
I'm curious, throughout the preparation, are you thinking, or are you worried, or is it coming across your mind of any like long-term effects in terms of like what concussions can do, or broken fingers, broken noses, like injuries like that? Or were you just like, no, I'm all in?
No, man, not at the time. You're not thinking of that at all. You're just like, how can I help the team? Like, man, when I made the OHL, like, I felt like a rock star, essentially, coming from Thunder Bay, and just like getting involved, having those fights, like doing that. I wasn't worried about anything. I was like, let's go, like, let's buy in. I remember I was doing absolutely anything to help myself with that role. Like, I was never like, I'm not a like psychopath that just loves to fight, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a like having fun, like goofing around in the dressing room, like doing pranks, like little things like that. But I didn't essentially had to learn that role. So I remember just like watching so many fights on YouTube, or like reading Bob Probert's book, and like watching documentaries like The Last Gladiator on repeat, just like filling my ears with information of how to like be tough and how to like fill that role, essentially.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm curious now too, as well. If you had, say, the information that you knew today, do you think that it would change kind of your preparation from like back then going into a role like that? Or I guess, like you said, and I know you too, like you're an individual who likes to have fun and kind of be the life of the party, a life of the locker room kind of thing.
Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like, my first year, probably first half of that year, I was like, I definitely had a hard time adjusting from being like a guy who jokes around and has fun with the boys, and like can be that guy, and then like on the ice is like an intense, in your face, like just nonstop chirping, like gonna like making threats out there, like gonna kill someone. And then so I had to kind of make that like emotional switch, where I was like, I have to, like, before a fight, where I would be like, okay, like square up, and then just get in that mindset where like, okay, I hate this guy, like I'm gonna flick that switch, like I literally like just want to like hurt this guy, and like kind of switch a flick. Holy fuck, can't even talk. But to being like not that person who's like nice and like likes to have fun joke, to like switch it to like, okay, like this is my role, I'm a fighter, I'm a psychopath, I'm gonna like do whatever. So then like making that adjustment like in my head to the mindset of like, i'm not I'm not this guy, I'm going to be this guy during the fight, essentially. And then switching back's always kind of hard too. Like, you're sitting in the box, you're like breathing heavy, you're like, well, you're like, I'm still like got crazy eyes, essentially. And then you're like, and then your teammates come over, they throw their stuff, your gloves, helmet in the box, they're tapping you on the shin pads, and you're like, all right, the boys got me, like fucking right, some pumped up.
I'm curious, what were some of your tips in terms of dialing back on the mental preparation, or sorry, switching back and forth, like getting out of that mindset? Because like you said, it's tough to kind of separate sometimes.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, I definitely had a hard time doing it sometimes, but just like, I don't know, keeping everything light in the dressing room. Like, I'd always be a guy who'd like just out of the box, like forgetting about it, just like t- breathing in the box, like getting through it, and then just being like making jokes with the boys, like laughing, having a good time, and then that just kind of snaps you out of it. So, I mean, definitely sometimes like if teammates kind of see you in that element where you're like essentially like just in that element of like being super intense, they're kind of like, okay, like this guy like is like I don't know, not crazy, but like has that ability to flick a switch. Like we don't want to upset him. We don't want. It's like he's not very approachable right now. But like with your teammates, like you don't want that at all. Like the other team, you want that with your teammates. You're like, no, this is the guy who like jokes around, has fun, blah blah blah. So that's just kind of how I like to keep it in the locker room, and like right after a fight. Like so, I got pretty good at just being able to stick in that fight to flick the switch and then turn it right off afterwards.
Mm. How did that make you feel in the sense? Because I'm sure there's probably some fans who and like people in maybe your personal life that almost kind of thought from what they were seeing on ice that like you're not that approachable guy. Like, was that a common occurrence that you've seen?
Not really, man. Like
Okay.
growing up, like all my friends kind of like they know me. Like I was never like they know that on the ice is one thing, off the ice is another. You know what I mean? Like I'm super off the ice. Like I'm a I'm a happy guy. I like to have fun, like joke around, mess around. So it was never like that. But some fans for sure were probably like, this guy's a psychopath. Like that don't know me, but then you get to know me off the ice, and it's just like everyone else, right?
Mhm. I think what's interesting too, and I've watched some of your old fights, and it was definitely like you were talented, like you were good at it. And I mean, I don't really know the category of like enforcers in that era, but I'll just make the assumption just from watching the few fights that you were probably one of the top fighters, and especially with the penalty minute statistics in the league at the time, and probably arguably in the country with some years as high as like 130 minutes. Do you think? Like, do you credit, I guess, the success that you had in that aspect with like how integrated and how much you force yourself to study?
Yeah, for sure. Like I definitely studied it a lot, probably too much to be honest, like where I could have been focusing on other parts of my game as opposed to that, but I knew it was like the thing that essentially got me there and like kept me there for that first year. And it's kind of hard snapping out of that. Like it's like that's my role. I'm gonna if I step away from that, I'm not the player. So it's like that I was that got me here. So it's like dialing it back in the sense of like I still want to have that element to my game, but I'm gonna grow all this other part of my game as well. Like I remember my first year I definitely had some unbelievable mentors for the fighting part with like the boxing coach in Plymouth. Like Tom Wilson was on that like that's probably the guy who I looked up to the most. Like he was an animal on the ice, like physically, and so some other guys, like one of our OAs, like his name was Mitchell Hurd, and he was unbelievable at like switching from left to right while he fought. So I remember after practice, like him pulling me aside and like teaching me like how to switch, or like even at home, I remember after I'd made the team, I bought and I'd fought from doing it. I bought a punching bag, and I used to tie jerseys to the punching bag, and essentially like practice like doing different like jersey grabs and like switching from left to right and like doing all that stuff. So yeah, I think I definitely um, studied it super hard, which made me like good at what I did. But I think I studied it probably a little too much and focused my attention on that more than um, like the actual aspect of like the skill and the other stuff. That kind of came later on.
Hmm. What was a sweeter moment in your rookie season? That first goal or the first fight?
Oh man, I think probably the first goal. To be honest, like I remember, yeah, for sure the first goal. The first fight happened way too quick. I was just like, this is a regular occurrence. But the first goal, man, I remember that year we were so stacked. Like I played 42 games that year. And I probably of those 42 games, I probably had 30, 35 games where I played one shift or two shifts. So like I wasn't getting any ice time at all because our team was so good. And I was on the bench as like an intimidation factor. So I remember I think it was in March, to be honest, like one of the last few games of the year. And I was I was on the PK. Like yeah, the coach was giving me opportunity just to be out there on the PK, learn the ropes. I think it was like a 3-4-1 game or 5-1 game against Saginaw. And on the PK I was short-handed and I went down and ended up I blocked a shot and then went down, got a pass from my teammate and chipped the puck in the net. And then I just remember going to the bench and all the boys were so fired up, like screaming, yelling. So that was pretty special for me to get that last one. I couldn't throw a donut my first year in the O, so that was pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be a great moment. Now, in terms of getting into the lineup, obviously, like with a team that's so stacked, you've mentioned some of the guys like, Tom Wilson and whatnot. What are you doing to not get too discouraged in the fact of, hey, I'm only getting in here like, you know, maybe 2 out of every 3 games or whatnot, and like I'm only getting like 1 or 2 shifts a night. And how are you making sure that you optimize that you're like you do enough in that say 30-second shift where they're letting you dress the following night?
Yeah, so I mean, I wasn't getting too discouraged at all, man. Like our team was so good, like, and I knew that, and we were winning games. So like
Mhm.
the team was a good buzz, like we were having fun. It was good to be around. So I essentially would just make myself as much of a presence during the game as possible from the bench. So I remember being my line mate on the fourth line. We'd just basically sit in the middle of the bench, but we'd be just chirping guys from the bench or like cracking jokes, like keeping things light on the bench. And then just watching those players, man. Like I learned so much just from watching all those players that were like unbelievable. And then the biggest part was definitely in practice. Like every single day after practice, it was kind of like when practice was done, the scratches and the guys that weren't really playing that much were doing extra work after practice, getting bag skated, all that sort of stuff. So I knew I was still putting in the work and practicing against all those guys that were like unbelievable players and they would only benefit me in the long run. So I wasn't too discouraged. I tried to stay positive and yeah.
What's the playbook, I guess, course material or sorry, course outline, how to how to send a good hockey chirp by Connor Sills? What's that look like?
Oh man. I don't know. There's so many, but I used like probably some that I shouldn't say on this podcast, but I used to just hit him with the you're a coward like your old man. Like that one and cuts deep. Like usually if someone chirps your mom, you're like, oh what the hell, blah, blah. But if someone tells you you're a coward like your old man, that one you'd usually get a rise out of someone.
Fair enough. Now, that first year that we've kind of been reflecting on, it's safe to say you guys didn't like the London Knights very much.
Yeah, no, those were then London and Windsor were our two teams that were bloodbaths.
Tell me about that series because obviously you meet them in the conference final of the OHL playoffs that year, and then unfortunately they go on and beat you in 5. But yeah, like just kind of that atmosphere in those weeks of that first playoff round there.
Yeah, so I think London did finish first that year, and we finished second. So it was kind of, and then once we met in the conference final, like we'd had some tough games. We knew they were a stacked hockey team as well, and then but just playing London in general in a playoff round where it's best of 7 games is a absolute like crazy experience. Like that barn in playoffs is nuts, and they would even bring their fan buses like to our games. So those were like some super exciting games to like be a part of.
Mhm. The that year in particular, so you got in for 5 games because like we've been saying, you were like a rotational player in that lineup. Those 5 playoff games at that point where like you're like the Whalers in itself are such a dominant team, and then as a whole, that was a very good like playoff runs, and like I said, like the Knights that year, like guys like Max Domi, all that, like they're stacked. Those 5 games, I'm assuming, were probably pretty valuable in the sense of like taking into next season.
Yeah, man. So I didn't even the 5 games that I played were actually at the beginning of playoffs. Um, and I remember I was actually getting some solid playing time come playoffs. I forget if there was injuries or like the coach just had faith in me or what, but I was playing, and then I actually ended up with a bad concussion, and so I was out and missed the rest of playoffs that year.
Okay, was that like your first ever concussion?
Yeah, that was my first and only concussion. It wasn't even from a fight or anything. It was just from I was flying in the zone on the forecheck, looking to make a big hit, and the guy was kind of up against the boards, and he kind of like dove out of the way last minute, and I like clipped him and ended up hitting my chin right on the metal beam that separates the glass behind the net, and
Oh,
then just like, and I don't even remember what happened after that. I only remember because I saw it on video. Like I was like Bambi legs trying to get off the ice, and then when I got off the ice, I just like collapsed on the bench, and then I honestly don't even remember what happened. I kind of snapped out of it when I got back to the when I was like on the bus on the way home.
did you play the rest of the game?
No, they did
Okay.
not let me play the rest of the game.
You made it sound like a second, like you had stayed in, and I was like, holy smokes. Now, when you're getting debriefed after of like, okay, hey, you're being diagnosed with a concussion, like here's kind of the protocol and everything that you have to do. What are you thinking through at that time?
uh, Man, I don't even like. It was kind of all blur. Like I was in so much like not even pain, just like what is going on. Like I was in a fog for like 3 weeks. I mean, and then kind of when I realized what had happened, like I was pissed because it was obviously it was during playoffs, and it was when I was probably getting the most playing time, and also when I probably would have got the most recognition from my coach and just like everyone during that time in that playoff run. So I was super pissed, but at the same time, I just wanted the boys to do well.
Mhm. Now, you said that's your one and the only. Like, typically, what we've kind of seen with concussions is like once you have one, they're pretty common and pretty frequent to come back and back. Why do you think like? Because that was early on in your career. I mean, you go on to play like 3 more seasons. You know, out of 2 of those seasons plus 100 in penalty minutes, which is like a large portion of fighting as well. And like you don't have another one. Like, what do you think really accredited that for yourself?
I don't know, man. Just kind of, I think just being more aware of like myself physically and playing that physical style, like not just being a loose cannon out there and like throwing my body uncontrollably or like getting into fights and like just going toe to toe, like eating punches. I definitely had to be more careful about it, and with the fighting aspect, more technical, where I wasn't letting them kind of like hit me in the face.
Yeah, it makes sense, I guess. Number one strategy of a fight: don't get hit in the face. I think I'm gonna write that one down.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta open up so that you can like get in there, pull them in, and fucking give them a go. But yeah, after that, like my first year, man, I definitely just like would bury my head and throw like as many punches as I could, and then after that, I got more technical with it.
Now, going into like the second and third season, and being in with the Whalers organization, once you kind of establish a role and you're a familiar face now in that locker room, do you find like anything changes in terms of preparation, or maybe even a difference of just mindset?
Yeah, I mean, after that first year, we like coming into my second year, we had almost a complete rebuild. Like half the team was gone. Even the 18-year-olds that were supposed to come back in like Tom Will or 19-year-olds, Tom Wilson, Connor Carrick, like those guys had made the NHL out of camp, which was somewhat unexpected. So just being one of those guys that had been there, definitely you got to take on more of a leadership role, and in the sense of getting ready for games and like showing the younger guys kind of how it's done and stuff like that. So the mindset sort of changed to like, all right, I'm kind of one of the guys who's been here, done that, and I got to set a good example. So in that sense, yeah.
Mhm. Is it more discouraging now, like as you're going through those moments, to not kind of regain the depth in terms of a playoff run that you guys were experiencing? Because unfortunately, aside from that first season, like um, I know you guys were short of making the playoffs, and then like not going too far into like the playoffs anymore.
Yeah, so you definitely lose a big chunk of that. Fortunately, so that year, that second year, we still had the same coach who was Mike Vellucci, who is like an awesome coach. He was notorious for being like one of the more intense and like in your face style coaches in the OHL at that time, and he just like demanded a lot out of the players, and kind of was like, and was really good technical like systems coach. So that second year he kind of brought that element and like had the older guys that had been on that run like lead the way. So that year we uh we still managed to make the playoffs and have a decent showing. And then the year after that, Vellucci got hired as the assistant GM in Carolina. So we got a brand new coach, um, who was actually one of the head scouts at the time. Great guy, but he was kind of a guy that was around the team that was like buddy with everyone before, and just kind of didn't mesh well as a coach.
Hmm.
And that year we had a pretty good team, but we also um, like had a lot of injuries. That year we kind of was the that third year was kind of the year where we found out that Plymouth was being sold to Flint, and I don't know, it was just kind of a weird year all in all. But um, yeah,
As a player, what's your initial reaction to finding out that the franchise you're with is going to be sold and it's no longer the Whalers, the team that introduced you to the OHL and draft you, but now you're the Flint Firebirds?
man, honestly, it left a pretty sour taste in my mouth. I think a lot of the guys were caught pretty off guard. Like we heard rumblings at the like midway point of the year that like potentially the team would get sold, and then the last like 2 months of the year were like, yeah, you guys are getting sold for sure. You're going to be moving to Flint, and we were kind of like, what the hell? Like this is kind of like a joke. Like we were upset about it, but at the same time, like middle of the year having to deal with that, and like it was definitely tough, man.
Probably a better, hindsight, maybe an off-season decision.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe an off season decision. I don't even know if that was I think that was kind of their plan, but it like had just spilled, and like they had to come forth and like tell us straight up how it was. But yeah.
Now, with in terms of a new coach coming in as an older guy, uh, you know, taking on a leadership role, what are you doing to ensure like I guess setting a foundation for a good relationship there? Because I mean he could very much come in and be like, you know what, I don't think like we should have Silsy here anymore. Like I want to bring in and I want to develop new leaders or bring in, some old relationships that I have for potential like just a new voice alongside of me.
Are you talking about my third year or for in Flint?
In Flint there. Or no, sorry,
Oh,
yeah, your third year.
okay, yeah. So my third year, I was actually like pretty close with the coach. So he knew he actually loved my style of play. He gave me a decent amount of opportunity, and kind of was in my corner the whole year. So I was fortunate in that regard, and he definitely like believed in me and that I could be a leader. But at the same time, when you have that relationship with a coach where you're sort of buddy before, like them coming in and having a position of authority and like being your actual coach, it's definitely different, right? Like you have to adapt to that. But I was definitely fortunate that he was was a fan of my style of play and just kind of believed in me.
Mm-hmm. When everything kind of comes, I guess, full circle, you guys are now Flint. That whole off season, what were you kind of doing? I guess because I guess it takes away from the training aspect in a way. Because would you have found like new billets and different things like that?
Man, so we knew that, yeah, so Flint's about an hour away from Plymouth. So we knew for sure like we were gonna need to get new billets, all we'd be in a new rink, new facility, like everything. So like at the time we were super like disappointed and like upset that like, we weren't be staying in Plymouth. But like there during the summer, that kind of transitions to excitement where you're like, okay, like new city, like new barn, new coaches, like let's go. Like I need to prove myself here. Like I was an overager, so I needed to prove myself that I could be there. At the same time, I was thinking in the back of my head, like, hey, like if I have 20 goals, 20 assists, and I'm fighting all the time, like there's a potential that I could possibly sign a contract or sign an AHL contract or something like that. Like there's definitely players that had that many points that played that style that had done it in the past. So that's kind of in my head at the time. And then I just worked super hard that off season, man. Like that off season, I was super excited. And then when I got there, it was kind of like man, don't get me wrong, I had awesome billets, but my experience overall in Flint was just like not great.
Yeah, what I guess why would that be?
Well, so like that's the year that we had the big strike.
Okay. I'm
Okay,
not
so
familiar with that. Yeah, you're gonna have to.
oh no, okay, this
No.
is I'll try and make this short, but so essentially they sold us, like Plymouth sold us to Flint, and they sold us to a guy named Ralph Nielsen, who is the biggest scumbag I've ever met in my life. Um, and then they had the general manager who was, what the hell was his name? Terry Christensen or something like that. That guy who was like essentially his puppet. And then this owner's son was on the team. So a 16-year-old who the general manager was the owner's son's general manager the year before. And then we had the coaches who came in and we were like, okay, like this year is going to be like interesting. Like, are they going to actually like play this guy, whatever. So the year like went on, we lost a bunch of players again. So like we knew we didn't have the best team, but the new coaches, we really enjoyed them. We like they were definitely players, coaches, and like we loved them in the rink and like what they had to offer. And then so they were playing the owner's son like a ton, like way too much. Like don't get me wrong, the guy was a really nice kid, meant well, but like just wasn't there. He's a 16-year-old, like what, and he was like costing us games. So we kind of the leadership group kind of pulled the coaches aside and kind of said respectfully, like, hey, like obviously it's your choice. But we think there's other like better defensemen that are capable of playing over like Hoken. Like we think that he shouldn't be playing, like he's costing us games, whatever. And then in confidence, they told us, like the leadership group, they're like, honestly, guys, like we have to play Hoken or else like we're gonna be fired. Like the owner like told us like we'll be fired, like we have to play them, whatever. And so essentially we told the coaches were like, no, like, fuck that. We have your back. Like, he can't do that. They're not going to fire you. Like, if they try and fire you for not playing him, we'll have your back. So then I think it was in November or whatever. Our record definitely was like, we had a tough start to the year, but they didn't. So they're like, okay, fine, we won't play him. So they didn't play him, and then they come in after a game that we lost to Oshawa. They were the Memorial Cup champions the year before, so defending Mem Cup champs. We lost in OT, like had a pretty good game against them considering. So like the boys are bummed we lost, but we played a good game. So we come in, or the coaches come in the locker room after, they're crying, like tears in their eyes. They're like, boys, like we just got fired, like whatever. And so we stood up and we're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, this is a joke, like no way. So then that's when the leadership group, we basically said like, they're not getting away with this. Like, they can't do this. We're going to take our jerseys. We're going to strike. Like, we're taking our jerseys off. We're going to go throw them on the owner's desk and be like, we're not playing if you don't hire the coaches back. So that's what we did, man. We threw our jerseys down, and then we walked out. And then the next day, so this was the first strike actually. And so we walked out, packed all our gear up. I remember, funny story actually. I was like, no one's practicing tomorrow. Like, we got to do this as a team. Like, no one's practicing. I took the practice pucks home with me. I was like, no one's practicing. Like, we're striking. And then the next day, like, I guess the OHL caught wind of like the strike, everything, called the owner of the team, and he's like, Ralph, like, you got it. Or I don't know exactly what it said, but essentially the owner rehired the coaches, gave them 3-year contracts, extensions. And then so the next day we come to the rink, the owner comes in, gives a bullshit apology. He's like, boys, sorry, like I made a mistake, blah, 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 whatever. Then I remember the coaches come in. They're like, boys, like, what's in the past is in the past. Like, let's get by this. Let's get back to work. Let's have a good practice. Like, let's fucking go, boys. And all the boys are fired up. They're like, all right, like, let's go. And then we go out for practice, and there's no pucks for practice because I took them home. And we have 5 pucks. The media's there because they want to know what's going on. We have no practice pucks, and they're scavenging for pucks. We had like 5 pucks doing like line drills.
Oh man, was anybody like, hey, where's the pucks, dude? Did you fess up to having them, or were you just like,
No,
I don't know?
I was like, fuck, I don't know where they are. Like, I don't know. And then the next day I brought them back, but we had no pucks for practice the next day, which is hilarious.
Man.
But like, dude, the story, I don't know. You want me to keep telling the story? Like, it goes on.
Go ahead, man. I'm enjoying this for sure.
Okay, so then after that, the coaches, like, it was weird, man. Like, the tension in the room, like, just like everything was kind of off. And we still weren't playing that well, but like the GM was intentionally, like, he traded away one of the best goalie. We had our goalie and a defenseman. The goalie was like the best goalie in the league at the time, Alex Nedeljkovic, who plays on Carolina now. And so he trades him away. And then we were just like, what the hell? Like, he was making the team worse. Like, just like, it was bad environment, man. So, and then the second strike happened. Like, after this, they got extensions, and then they fired them. So they fired them again, like 2 months later. And so we strike again. We're like, no fucking way. Like, this is happening again. We take all our stuff from the room, bring it home. And then this one was way longer, man. Like, this one was like 5-6 days long of a strike. So but our coaches told us, they're like, man, like, boys, like, don't put your careers on the line for us. Like, things are too bad. Like, we're not coming back. Like, we can't come back after this. Like, things are just too weird. And we were like, okay, we can handle that, but like, we don't want them bringing in, like, we don't want this owner who's a scumbag bringing in whoever he wants, like, to coach our team. Like, that's not happening. So I remember he tried bringing in one of his like buddies, who was some Russian guy named Sergey, and he's like, all right, this is gonna be your coach, and like the boys boycotted it. We're like, not a chance. Like, you're not our coach. Get out of here. Like, so then I ended up coaching the team. Like, I was for the whole week. I didn't even dress in my players gear. I put on all the coaches' trackies, and I was running drills, like getting everyone, because we were still like, all the younger guys and a lot of guys were like scared, right? Like, we're like, what the hell is gonna happen? Like, we still want to play hockey, like we still want to have a good time, but like, this is craziness. So I just kind of ran the drills, and like I remember we'd have group meetings at my billet house and just kind of like talking over things and like seeing where things would go. And then finally, David Branch, the OHL commissioner, on the Friday night before our game that we were going to strike for, he came down and he had a meeting with the boys. He's like, all right, boys, like, we got to figure this out. What do you want? Blah, blah. And we're just like, we don't want Nielsen picking our coaches for us, like giving us someone that's a joke, and we want him punished for like what he's been doing. We were told that this wouldn't happen again. And then he, and then it was like 6 o'clock, and he's like, all right, yeah, I'm going to find him. I'm going to do all this, whatever. We'll get the coaches. So he made the vice president of the OHL our coach, and one of our coaches, and like the assistant GM who was with us in Plymouth as our coaches for the rest of the time that we were there. And then we went and skated for that game. We were like late from our meeting with the OHL commissioner, drove to the rink, got dressed, and made it just in time for warm-ups. It was wild what happened.
I'm like speechless. I've never heard of that. What a gong show.
Dude, it was literally the biggest shit show I've ever been a part of. But like, at the same time, like, it was something that I don't wish upon anyone, but at the same time, like, we were like learned a lot. Like, we were super close, like teammates. Like, we couldn't really like trust the owner and the GM and like what they were doing, and if they had our best interest at heart. So it was kind of like the boys were all there for each other. So it was something super special, and we needed to all like be there for each other, and just like, I don't know, it was something that I don't wish on anyone, but it was like something I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah, well, my first initial thought there is like, these guys are grown men and you're a bunch of teenagers at the time. Like, how are you the most like responsible and like mature out of the whole group?
Yeah, that was exactly like our thoughts, man. Like, there was for sure some younger guys that were like scared, that was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, like blah blah blah, but they were behind it. They were like, you know what, like, you guys, like, we'll follow your guys' lead. Like, this is kind of like they believed in us more than they believed in the ownership. So it was crazy, man. But like I said, we were a super close team after those two incidents, and it was, yeah, man, it was crazy.
Did you guys win that game after the meeting with the OHL guy? How'd that game go?
I can't even remember how it went, to be honest. But like, after that, we like, man, essentially the team was the laughing stock of like the league at that time. So we just honestly, off the ice, like on the ice practices, like, we just tried to soak it all in and have the most fun we could in those circumstances. So like, we definitely turned like, it was super negative what was going on around us, but like, as teammates and the way we approached it, like, we tried to make it into a positive, where we were doing something special and sticking up for ourselves and what we believed in and stuff.
What do you think like was a big testament to why you guys got through that and were able to enjoy just the hockey aspect together?
I think just being there for one another, man. Like, going back to I don't know. It was definitely tough, man. Like mentally on some of these kids, like on me as well. Like I had a tough time with it, but I was one of the older guys that needed to kind of be there for everyone. It was like, boys, like this is this is messed up. What's going on? But we need to all come together, stick together, and we can't let these guys like ruin the team we have and the fun we're gonna have. So like let's just make the most of it and like shove it in their faces essentially. Be like, look at like we're still able to have fun even though you guys like turned this into an absolute zoo.
Fair enough. I'm curious now, as a alumni, is it because um, Flint, they've kind of turned a corner now in terms of the league standings. Like they're looking like, I mean, it's tough to say because it really looked like they were kind of coming into a stride right before everything got canceled, and obviously the OHL hasn't been back since. But it kind of looks like, especially with having guys like Ty Delandria kind of come out of the program, that they're and especially some of the young prospects that they have coming up, it looks like they're turning a cover. Does that like give you a little like warmth in the heart? I guess like you're happy as an alumni to see them finally make the strides now.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. Like a lot of man, every single player that went through that strike in that first year, like put their careers, I guess, on the line, and like they didn't know how it would turn out. Like we went on strike, they could have called our bluff, not changed a thing, and like we like missed games, like missed practices, like just basically put ourselves in the spotlight to like I remember guys calling their agents and being like, man, like this place, like it's gonna look so bad on me, like whatever. But like the way I looked at it, it was like we're sticking up for ourselves, and if anything, it's kind of sticking up for the politics aspect in hockey and against the ownership. So I'm super excited for all the guys that are there now and turning that organization around and fixing essentially what the owner and GM did for that inaugural season. So I couldn't be happier for those guys.
Are you chatting with your agent at any point throughout this time? Because you really did take like a leadership role. I mean, like you could have been on salary for being a coach here for a week.
Dude, it was actually hilarious. Like I was literally coaching the boys. At first it was sort of somewhat a joke, but then it was like, hey, like we can't take this off. I remember OHL Insider was tweeting, they're like, will Connor Sills be behind the bench on Friday night? And I was like, holy shit, like am I gonna be behind the bench? But like I was kind of like joking, but in the back of my head I was like, dude, I'm full for this. Like I will 100% be behind the bench if they need me. So it was pretty funny, man. But or well, it wasn't funny, but it
Yeah.
was a funny situation. I guess I could say I was the youngest youngest person ever coaching an OHL team.
Yeah,
But
man, they got to give you credit for that. I want that in the record books. Connor Sills, youngest OHL coach.
yeah, man, maybe you could pull some strings. I could get that on my resume or something.
Yeah.
um
I
yeah,
don't know
man.
how many strings I got to pull, but I'm sure if we start tweeting about it enough, maybe it could happen.
Oh man, man, I'm surprised you hadn't heard about that. Like that was a big thing going on during that year, but like
Well, so in
have you
my defense, 2015, 2016 season, right? That was the one. So
yeah,
I'm like graduating high school at this point in like Claremont, Newfoundland. So
yeah, that's true. That's
it's one
true,
of
buddy.
those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not really sure like how much I'm paying attention to it. Like, because the thing is too is at that point in time, I guess in my career, almost I'm paying attention to uh, like post secondary opportunities and things of that nature kind of thing. And you're almost looking at like the big leagues and stuff, and you're not. I don't think it really recognized to me like that these other organizations and things would also become like good like networking opportunities and I guess maybe like stepping stones in the career until I really like moved to Ottawa, right, and started and not even right away. I would say maybe like year 2, year 3 of being in Ottawa, and then now since I've kind of been paying attention to it a little bit more.
Yeah, that's fair, man.
Dude, but I mean, hey, good on you. Like, what we've mentioned how you've been such like a study hard kind of guy. Were you like, once you got assigned to the role of coach, basically, did you just start studying on like how to coach a hockey team?
No, no, not
Yeah.
at all. Like it wasn't, man. It wasn't just me. Like it was the whole team coming together. That was like pulling this together. I was the only one not in my hockey equipment. Like we had like the captain at the time, Alex Peters. He took a huge role. There are other OAs, like all man, all honestly all the guys together. Like we just kind of came up with practices and went about our business and did that. So it definitely wasn't just me coaching the team, but I was the only one wearing a tracksuit.
Hey, you know what? We'll yeah, we got to get that on your resume though. The tracksuit makes it count. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, man, it was an experience, that's for sure. But
Is any part of you looking back on it fondly, or is it still like, no, like screw this, honestly?
wait, sorry, what's that?
I said, like, is any part of you now, like during this time, like, do you look back on it fondly, or is it still like a sour taste, kind of like screw this, more or less?
No, man, I'm definitely over it now. Like it was unfortunate what happened, and I hope the owner and GM and everyone involved kind of learned their lesson. I mean, I
Mhm.
think it's super unfortunate the way things played out and how it like affected everyone's year of hockey that year. But I've made peace with it, man. Like I've definitely learned some valuable lessons, and uh, it's something that I kind of don't really think about too often. You bringing it out of me, but it's yeah, I mean, I'm pretty proud of it, but at the same time, it's it's a situation that you don't really want to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, like my bad. I never even really kind of realized it, right? So this is all brand new news to me.
Yeah, man, it was wild.
I'm curious too, though, with in terms of like your OHL career, and even though there was like two different teams with like Flint and the Whalers, you've stayed with like the one organization throughout your whole like junior career. Like you didn't really experience a trade. Obviously, you experienced like a bunch of other stuff. What do you think really like just kind of made you stay with the one organization? Like what do you think separated you where you didn't find yourself being a part of a trade package or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess you could look at it the good way like that. Like they didn't really want to get rid of me, or you could look at it the other way where it's like no one wanted to trade for me. But no, I definitely think it was just kind of like my style of play. Like even then, my later years, like that kind of role and like hard nosed hockey where you can play that style and bring a bigger element to your game like skill wise is definitely hard to come by. So I think that's something that kind of like just my all around game kind of helped me stick with the one organization, and just the coaches that like believed in me and had like knew what I brought to the table. But so yeah,
With your last season, I think it was 130 something. I think like 132 penalty minutes. Was that the most in the CHL that year? It's definitely up there, right?
uh I don't know about the whole CHL. I think it was the second most in the OHL, maybe the third most. I don't know, but
Okay.
yeah, it was up there for sure.
How much of that do you think were fights?
Man, honestly, my last year was probably the year I fought the least amount.
Okay.
Um, a lot of those penalties, I kind of prided myself in being like a guy that could take coincidentals. Like I'd be in front of the net, and there wouldn't be like I bet you a quarter or like one third of those penalties were coincidentals, where it's like, all right, you're both going to the box for like roughings in front of the net or something like that. So that's pretty funny. Yeah, and most of those weren't fights.
Okay, that's interesting because I look at that and we've had guys on before who the triple digit penalty minutes and it's all from fighting, but you were just more so like coincidentals too. It wasn't even like you were taking tripping penalties, really putting the team at a disadvantage much.
No, so I think I only got into like I don't know 6 or 7 fights that year, and then the rest were coincidentals. Man, I usually in my career I probably never like majority of my penalties are like boarding, like checking, roughing, like elbowing, like something like physical. Like I would barely ever take a tripping penalty or a like hooking penalty or something like that.
I guess, do you think that's a testament to your size and the style of play that you have?
Yeah, for sure. And
Mm.
I always knew that playing that style of hockey would end up getting me kind of in the bad books with either the refs or and just like have that spotlight on me. So I knew I could never like be I knew I had to be careful with my stick in order to not take those penalties that put the team at a disadvantage.
Mhm. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to get like the certain amount of fights and then put up 20 points and then hopefully sign a AHL or like a coast deal or whatever it may be. Obviously that didn't happen right then and that point. Take me through, I guess, the transition of, am I going to go pro or am I going to commit to the University of Ottawa?
Um, man, to be honest, after that year in Flint, like I was in a pretty bad spot, like from in a hockey standpoint, and mentally just exhausted from that year. I took some time and definitely wondered, should I be playing hockey anymore, or should I just use my schooling? I knew I wanted to go and play, or I knew I wanted to do firefighting school, which is college. Like they don't have that in university. But
Mhm.
then after like talking with my parents and just like having some conversations with myself, I realized like, no, I for sure have a lot more to give to this game. Like I love the game. I'm gonna still play. And then um I knew I knew right then and there that I was gonna use the schooling package. Like I thought that would be not a wise idea to go and try and play in the coast and use that up. So then I thought, what's a way I can get a fresh start and like just enjoy hockey again, man, but just like have fun with it, like not be in a place that was so draining like Flint. So then I ended up talking with Pat pretty late, honestly. Like I think it was in like July or something. He flew me down for a recruiting trip, kind of just um showed me around Ottawa, showed me the facility, showed me the rink, talked to me about his plan and who he was bringing in and all that. And I kind of like after talking with him, I was kind of like, yes, like after that trip, I was like, yeah, like I'm all in. Like he believed in me, and just the rebuild of the program. I was like, this is going to be an awesome opportunity for myself, and just like yeah. And then even looking at Pat, like I don't even think he even knows this, but I looked at Pat as a player, and that guy put up some ridiculous penalty minutes when he played in the QMJHL, and I was like, man, like this guy definitely plays a hard style. Like there's no way like he doesn't like my style. So I kind of just, and I love the city of Ottawa, man. I was like, I'm all in. Like, let's go. Like, this will be fun for me, and it's somewhere I can excel in in a hockey sense.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, I've heard the whole recruitment stories from Pat time and time again, more or less, obviously doing an episode with him, but then, being behind the scenes and photographing like the senior nights for you guys and whatnot. And, it's funny how it kind of lines up with exactly what you were saying. Like he was building a team that like regardless if you guys were going to get a lot of wins that season, he just wanted you guys to be tough to play against. And you were obviously a big piece of that for him, right? Especially with like your reputation as being that tough guy. In terms of the plan that he lined out, do you remember any certain specifics that really stood out to you where you were like those were the notes that really hit for you?
Man, I think it was just like he wanted to bring in good people. Like he was always keen on bringing in character guys. I didn't know anyone that he brought in, but just his mentality and the way he was kind of building the team. Like I want guys that are good guys, that are team guys, that are fun, that are hard to play against, whatever. And honestly, part of the reason I went there, I was like, if I'm gonna go anywhere, like I kind of want to step in and make an impact right away. And I knew that there had only been like 4 guys committed major junior, and the rest were all junior A guys. And so I like in my head, I'm thinking like unreal, like it was kind of a confidence boost. I was like, unreal, like I have the upper hand on these guys. Like I'm gonna be a player that's like better than these guys. Obviously, that's not the case. There's some unbelievable players, and like you see that in junior A that come out of the rank. But that was kind of like my mindset where I was like, I have this confidence now that I'm gonna be like the guy or one of the guys. And Pat definitely believed in me, and yeah, so the rest is history.
How did you not lose confidence when you got in and realized that like the junior A guys were, just as talented and really exceeded your expectations for maybe what you initially thought coming in?
Yeah, so I just kind of like obviously right when I got in, I was like, wow, like these guys can play, like these guys are good, clearly. But I just kind of kept that mindset like the whole summer training and leading into going to play. I was like, I'm gonna be the guy, like giving myself that positive talk where like I'm the best, kind of like I'm like as arrogant as it sounds, like giving yourself that kind of talk. And then just once I got there, just like sticking with that, like I'm gonna push myself, I'm gonna put in the extra work, like I'm gonna do this and that to like maintain that confidence and kind of be one of those guys that can step up and play more of a skilled role than like a fighting. Obviously there's no fighting in youth sports, so that's kind of where I took off in that aspect.
Yeah, because I'm curious, you know, after that first rookie season in U Sport, you put up over like pace basically more than a little bit more than half a point per game. So, you're averaging well above what you were doing in the OHL. Also, though, what's amazing to me is you still kept 75 pims that season. When first rookie season, what are you really like? I guess accrediting to like adapting to the new style right away, because now you're putting up points regularly throughout the season now, as opposed to maybe it's all just kind of that fighting and enforcer role that you've been so accustomed to.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it was definitely hard. I wanted to keep that aspect of like the hard style in my game. So it was definitely hard, like not being able to fight, like the roughing after the whistles, the chirping, the like being super physical, just in general kind of gets you more penalties in that league, I guess. So I mean, Pat definitely worked closely with me on kind of toning it down and like picking my spots and like maintaining that type of play, but being more of a skilled player and getting a bigger role offensively. So I think the first year was sort of like a transition year, but getting a taste of being able to play a bigger role offensively definitely helped the transition and made me realize that, or made me um, able to produce and focus on my skills.
Yeah, I guess the so that 75 penalty minutes probably a little bit of growing pains.
Yeah, for sure, man.
When you go into it now, like, totally different, lineup and things of that nature. What's the locker room like, and how are you kind of like, bonding with the guys in those early stages, and then growing the bond that you eventually did?
Yeah, I mean, at first coming in, obviously I didn't know anyone. There was some guys that knew each other or had played against each other. Like I didn't know anyone or had played against anyone. So coming in, I just definitely didn't want to come off uh, like too strong. I definitely just wanted to get in there and get to know the guys, and then have my personality come out. But I think based off like what they knew about me, like looking at my hockey history and kind of like the way I played, they were kind of more like, all right, like is this guy like mean off the ice, or is he like what's his deal kind of. And then it was pretty funny, like being able to grow a pretty unbelievable relationship with all those guys and go the whole way with them, and kind of be able to joke around and transition from that fighter role to more of a skilled role and just be a locker room guy.
One thing that's, pretty apparent, especially throughout this conversation, is that every group that you really associate yourself with, by large, super close and just very well connected. Right back from the Kings when you're playing minor hockey with all your buddies, to the group that you guys established with Flint and the Whalers as well. Like you're saying that you're super close and tight, and then obviously you still end up having that same relationship in Ottawa. What do you think is responsible for all that? Just everywhere that you have gone in your hockey career, you're just growing these like close and exceptional bonds.
I don't know, man. I'm just a super social guy. I'm definitely one of the guys that likes to have fun and keep things light in the room and joke around. And man, I've been fortunate enough to have some unbelievable roommates throughout my whole OHL career and at U Ottawa. And just like, I don't know, man, just keeping things light, joking around, having fun, I think is the most important thing. Like not putting myself out there to the social aspect of the game, and not just like hiding it, focusing strictly on hockey, not like trying to be part of the guys. I think I can credit it to just being social and wanting to have fun with them.
Who's the best roommate in the OHL? Who gets that award?
Matt Mistley for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
What
yeah,
what was the separation there?
dude. We man, oh man, there's so many stories, but like we would just literally do everything together and just have so much fun. Like we'd go to the movies, like we'd watch every single movie ever. We'd literally set up and just have Harry Potter marathons in the basement, like just shooting the shit, just like doing. Man, we were pretty inseparable, and he's still probably one of my best buddies today. So it's cool to have those bonds stick with you from 2 years living together to even now. So um, yeah, man, pretty special.
You're a big Harry Potter guy?
Oh yeah, bud. Love Harry Potter.
I have not watched a movie or read a page of the book, to be honest.
Come on, dude. I'm jealous, dude. That means you get to watch it for the first time. I've watched those movies on repeat, dude.
It's a lot of work, I must
I'm a,
say.
oh, man, the movie's not that bad. You could crush it in a couple nights.
Yeah. Okay.
Big Hermione fan.
Who's the or well, I think whenever Harry Potter comes up in conversation sometimes, I think people ask what house are you in? Are you is it a Hufflepuff? Is that the house?
Yeah, that's one of the houses. But
Oof,
yeah, I don't know. I can't really answer that question. Definitely not a Hufflepuff, but
no.
I I won't be the one to answer that question.
All right, I'm in over my head at this point because I got no idea. Who's the best roommate in the U Sports U Ottawa gang though?
Dude, I can't even break it down. Like Nukes, Deeks, and Marco are all unbelievable. So I can't pick just one, just all of them.
Fair enough. So I'm curious now, what's the future for Connor Sills, the hockey player? Because obviously, a great U Sports career too. That was kind of cut short, unfortunately, with the COVID situation. We didn't really get to see how that tournament would have panned out. But yeah,
Yeah, man. So right now I'm just hopeful that I'm hopeful that there is a season next year. I'm still training as much as possible and keeping that option open. But yeah, man, we'll see what happens. I'm still want that experience and want that time to be able to go overseas and explore and just see that route of hockey and gain that experience. So we'll see what happens with COVID here, but that's kind of what's going on right now.
because you were signed over in the UK, correct?
Yeah, man, I was signed with Dundee of the Elite Ice Hockey League
Now,
with Mikey.
yeah. So I guess in turn, like, what made that be the destination that you wanted to go to at the time?
At the time, I was talking to a few teams and just hearing what they had to say. I was also taught I wasn't very familiar with European hockey at all. I was also talking with Pat, and he just kind of said that league fits your style of play. You'll love it there. Can't go wrong. So I was kind of looking at that league to start, and then once I started talking to the coach in Dundee, he just saw everything in me that kind of I saw in myself. So just hearing about the team and the atmosphere and the culture and the fans, just kind of all of it made me want to join Dundee.
You've also looking into the management side more things, eh? Let's chat about that. Is it Zenith Hockey Management?
Yeah, man. So Zenith Hockey Management, one of my best buddies from back here in T Bay, actually started it, and he reached out to me about probably 2 months ago and just told me that he was starting this business, had this plan. And so essentially it's a consulting agency for players going to play junior or college. And he's a player family advisor that assists players with on off ice development, like video analysis, nutrition, workouts, team negotiations, like college and draft prep and OHL, U Sports, NCAA, just basically everything, and kind of came up to me and asked hey, do you want to help out and be a part of this? And I always knew that after hockey, I wanted to get involved in hockey and give back in some way, whether that was coaching or managing or skills or just anything. So when he kind of approached me, I was like, yeah, man, I'm not really I'm pretty uncertain of the times right now and if hockey will be a thing. But I told him for sure I'll help out and do as much as I can right now. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I'll be helping out with the guys that are going to be taking the OHL route and getting ready for draft, and then I'm going to be helping more so with off ice training and on ice training and stuff in the summer when I'm done with when I have more time and I'm done with the fire school.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean that's definitely an exciting chapter. Do you see that even potentially almost being I guess more of a full time thing at any point, or does your heart lie solely with firefighting?
No, man. So firefighting, the thing about firefighting is that you have a pretty it's a you have a pretty open schedule. You can work two jobs with being a firefighter. So they work, I know how it is in Thunder Bay. They work 24-hour shifts a week. And then the rest of that, you kind of have to yourself. A lot of them have other side jobs and stuff like that. So I always thought that firefighting, for sure, I want to do that. That's something that I'm interested in and can give back to the community and just have a bigger purpose doing that. But then also on the side, I always know that I want to do something with hockey and give back to the game that's given me so much in that standpoint. So yeah, I think I always will be involved in hockey one way or another, whether I'm playing or doing something else. But yeah,
No, that's exciting. Now, looking back, I'm kind of curious, what's the biggest takeaways from all your things? I guess in terms of like fond memories of just looking back at all the hockey you've played so far.
oh man, there's so many like good memories that come to mind, but probably just like all the relationships I've made. I've made so many like good friends and had like a blast with them just like every single day that I've been at the rink or off the ice. So definitely probably the people you meet along the way is something that's super special and been unbelievable for me.
You got the nice jerseys kind of lined up there in the background. The four. I see a couple of Whalers ones and the GGs. When you look at those jerseys now, what do you think of?
Just like I don't know, it just feels good having them up there. My dad obviously each year kind of put them up there, so it just feels good looking at it. I'm pretty proud of where I've been and how hard I've worked to get to that point. Not many people can say that they've played in the OHL or had a 4-year career at U Ottawa, so I'm just pretty proud.
Sills, man, hey, I want to thank you for your time. This is, everything that I've got for you, and a little bit more. This is part of the show where I always hand it over to you. So it's your show. You can chat about whatever you want. I mean, life lesson, childhood story, whatever, man. It's all it's your show now.
Yeah, man. I don't really have much, but just if any of the boys are listening in Ottawa or anything, fucking love you guys. Hope you guys are doing well, and we'll have to get a reunion in us sometime soon.
No, for sure. That as long as I'm invited with the camera,
Oh yeah, oh yeah, man. You'll be documenting the whole thing. Don't you worry.
I love it. Some of my favorite photos are just the like that playoff run, man. Like some of the stuff on the bus, and even the locker room celebrations after, and the nights, especially even the couple days that we got in Halifax. It was a special time for me, for sure.
Dude, that was such a special time. Just like in all our careers, but like it was awesome to have you being a part of that and documenting it along for all of us. I know we're all super appreciative of you being there, and like even just what you're doing now, man, with this. It's awesome to have all the guys on and kind of like marketing the team, putting everyone kind of on the map and having some good conversations. This has been fun, man.
Hey, I'm glad. I'm always happy to do it. It's been a lot of fun, but the credit goes to you guys. You guys are great storytellers with great stories who hold themselves to very high standards, right? So yeah, I'm just it's funny. I think it was with Drover and his buddies. I'm just the mediator, more or less, like and display it. It's all you guys at the end of the day.
Well, thanks, man. This has been unreal.
Yeah, man. Hey, listen, anytime you want to hop back on, we'll have to do it for sure. And even sometimes we can just in the COVID times crack a beer and have a good laugh and whatnot.
Yeah, for sure, man.
All right, take care, Sills.
Okay, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.